The air in the factorum tastes like recycled sweat and burnt oil. Your lungs have felt heavy since you were 6 years old. Every morning starts with the same mechanical scream of the sector siren. It tells you that your shift began 10 minutes ago. If you are late, the enforcers use the shock malls. You saw a man get hit once and his eyes stayed wide for 3 days before he finally died. This is life in the hive. You work the Great Forge because your father did, and his father did, before the lung rot took both of them. You spend 16 hours a day moving heavy shells for guns you will never see. The shells are bigger than your torso. They are cold and greasy. You hate them. You also hate the Emperor, who demands them. Most of all, you hate the silence of the gods your mother used to whisper about when the enforcers were out of earshot. Everything changes when the sky turns the color of a fresh bruise. The planetary defense sirens start wailing, but they sound different this time. They sound like they are panicking. You look up through the reinforced glass of the dome and see the clouds parting. Something is coming down through the smog. It is not the sleek white ships of the merchants. These ships are jagged and dark. They look like they were built out of spite and old iron. One of them slams into the hab block next to the forge. The shockwave knocks you off your feet. You hit the metal floor and the taste of blood fills your mouth. People are screaming like the world is about to end. Maybe it is. The enforcers start shouting for everyone to get back to their stations. They say the Emperor will protect the loyal, but a second later, a massive door of the crash ship explodes outward. The things that step out are not human. They are taller than the enforcer sergeants on their high chairs. Their armor is the color of midnight and dried blood. Spikes grow out of their shoulders like metal thorns. You see skulls hanging from their belts, real skulls. Some of them are still wet. One of the giants look at the enforcers and just moves faster than anything you've ever seen before. You blink. The enforcers have already been reduced to mere piles of red meat on the floor. Then the giant turns his head slowly and looks at you. His helmet is a snarl made of silver. You think he is going to kill you next. He points his chainsword at the forge doors and tells you to run or die. You choose to run. You follow them because there's nowhere else to go. The hive is burning. The PDF soldiers are dying in heaps. You watch the giants in the black armor move through the streets like they own the shadows. They just walk forward, and everything in their way turns into dust. You find yourself in a group of survivors. Most of them are young. Most of them have the same look in their eyes as you. It is the look of someone who has realized the laws they live by were all lies. You find a man named Hax. He worked the Chemvats. He tells you that these are the true masters of the galaxy, that they have come to set the hive free. You look at a burning hab block and wonder what freedom is supposed to feel like. The giants gather you all in the central plaza. There are hundreds of you now. A marine with a cloak made of human skin steps forward. He takes off his helmet. His face is a map of scars and silver studs. He says his name is Malik. He tells you that the weak die for a corpse on a throne. He says the strong take what they want from the stars. He asks who wants to live forever. Everyone raises their hand. You raise yours too, but for a different reason. You are thinking about the way the enforcers looked when they were being killed, and you want that power to rescue others like you just were. You want to be the savior holding the chainsword next time. They take you to their ship. The interior smells like ozone and ancient dust. It feels like the ship is breathing. You hear whispers in the walls, and they're coming from the metal itself. Malik leads you to a room filled with surgical tools that look like they were designed for torture. You don't see anesthesia or numbing gel. Your hand starts to feel clammy. They strap you to a cold stone slab. Your heart is in your throat. A machine with too many arms lowers from the ceiling. It has drills and saws and needles as long as your forearm. Malik stands over you and says that most of you will rot on this floor. He says only the ones with enough hate will survive the change. Now we're in full-blown panic mode. The first needle goes into your spine. It feels like someone poured molten lead into your nervous system. You try to scream, but your throat locks up. You feel your ribs cracking. The machine is pushing something inside your chest. It is a second heart. It kicks into gear, and your vision explodes into sparks. Your body is rejecting it. You feel your old heart trying to stop. You think about the factory and the gray soup you ate every day. You think about the enforcer who kicked your father when he was too sick to stand. That memory gives you a spark of heat. You hold on to it. You focus on that hate until the pain becomes a dull roar. Weeks pass in a blur of blood and fire. You wake up and your skin feels too tight. Your muscles are bulging in ways that shouldn't be possible. You are taller now. You look at your hands and they are the size of dinner plates. Hax didn't make it. You saw them dragging his body out to the disposal chutes 3 days ago. Only 12 of you are left from the hundreds in the plaza. Malik gives you your first suit of power armor. It's old, with holes in the plating and the paint peeling. You can see the name of the previous owner scratched into the gauntlet. Guess he doesn't need it anymore. You slide the ceramic plates over your limbs. The armor hooks into the ports in your skin. It feels like you are being plugged into a lightning bolt. The suit hums, and you can feel it's telling you that it's hungry. Your first mission is back on the planet you came from. The capital city is holding out. They have walls and cannons and thousands of soldiers in blue uniforms. Your squad drops from the sky in a metal pod. The impact feels like a hammer blow to the head, and you are out before the smoke clears, not like the shells from the forge. You are holding a bolter. It is heavy and perfect. You see a line of soldiers in front of you. They look like dolls, like they're made of paper. You pull the trigger. The kickback would have broken a normal man's shoulder, but to you, it feels like a heart. You thought the soldier you shot would have fallen. No, he disappears in a spray of red mist. You start laughing. It is a deep sound that echoes in your helmet. Now you're running toward the wall. Bullets bounce off your chest like rain, not even slowing you down one bit. You reach the first line of defense, and soon your combat blade like a whirlwind of meat and iron. The metal of their shield snaps like dry wood, but you don't feel tired or scared. This feeling, it's feeling like a god. You reach the command bunker and find a colonel cowering behind a desk. He starts begging, talking about his duty and his family. Do you remember the way the planetary governor used to look down from a spire while children like you starved in the gutters? You close your hand around the colonel's throat and squeeze until the begging stops. After the battle, you return to the ship. The warp is waiting. You enter the Eye of Terror for the first time. The view through the portals make your head ache. The stars are the wrong colors, looking like they are bleeding. You see shapes moving in the purple clouds. They are bigger than ships and have eyes that follow you. Malik tells you not to look too long. He says the warp is a mirror, and in it you might see what you are becoming. You spend your time in the training pits. You find the other new recruits with real blades. It taught you that a Chaos Marine doesn't have friends. Rather, they are allies of convenience. They are brothers who will stab you in the back if it gets them a better gun. You learn to sleep with one eye open and your hand on your knife. The years start to blur. Time doesn't work the same way in the eye. Sometimes you spend a week on a mission and return to find 100 years have passed on the ship. Sometimes it's the other way around. Your armor starts to change. The metal is growing into your skin. You don't take it off anymore because the suit feeds you through tubes and keeps your blood moving. You find that you can hear the thoughts of the people you kill. Their fear tastes like copper on your tongue. You start to decorate your pauldrons with trophies. A helmet of an ultramarine you killed on a moon made of glass. The finger bones of a priest who tried to exorcise you. One day, the fleet gathers for something big. The War Master has called a Black Crusade, and you are part of the vanguard. Thousands of ships are pulling out of the warp, looking like a sea of iron. Your target is a fortress world called Cadia. They say the gate there has never fallen. You think they just haven't met you yet, but the drop is different this time. The sky is filled with fire. Millions of shells are crossing paths in the air. You hit the ground in the middle of a trench line. The soldiers here aren't like the ones from your home. These men have iron in their blood. They fight back using lasers that burn through your shoulder guards. You feel the heat on your skin, but it only makes you move faster. You find a squad of Cadians holding a bridge. They have a heavy boulder set up. It is chewing through your brothers. You see one of your squad get his head taken off by a lucky shot. You don't feel sad for him, but you just want his ammo. You circle around the side of the bridge and climb the sheer rock face with your bare hands. The servos in your gloves whine as they crush the stone. You reach the top and jump into the middle of the gun crew, using the heavy boulder to clear the rest of the bridge. It is over in seconds. The gun is hot and vibrating in your hands, and you feel a deep and gravelly voice in the back of your head. It tells you to keep killing and says that blood is the only currency that matters. You realize the voice isn't yours. It belongs to something sitting in the warp, but you don't mind because the voice knows how to win. The war for the fortress world goes on for months. You stop counting the days and cleaning the gore off your breastplate. It builds up in layers until you look like a statue made of scabbed meat. You find yourself in a cathedral in the heart of a capital city. The windows are stained glass showing the emperor saving humanity. You think it is the funniest thing you have ever seen. You then come across a group of civilians hiding under the pews, praying. They think their god is going to step down from the clouds and save them. You walk up to the altar and smash it with your fist. You tell them that their god is a skeleton on a golden chair, that the real gods are right here in the room with them. A group of loyalist marines bursts through the doors, wearing bright yellow armor, imperial fists talking about honor and duty. They move in perfect formation while you charge them with no one but yourself because you have 10,000 years of spite in your veins. You hit the lead marine like a runaway train. Your chainsword bites into his neck. The sound of the teeth hitting ceramic is the most beautiful music in the galaxy. He tries to punch you with a power fist, but you are already moving like a blur of black and gold. You kill 3 of them before the rest can even find their range. The last one looks at you with disgust, calling you a traitor. You lean in close so he can see your eyes through your visor, and then you tell him that you're just the only one who woke up. The world eventually breaks. You are back on the ship when the planet falls apart. You watch the chunks of rock floating in the void. You feel a sense of accomplishment, but it is empty because there is no peace for a Chaos Marine. There is only the next fight. You go back to your quarters and sit in the dark. You can hear the ship talking to you again. It wants more souls and blood to fuel its engines. You then notice your hands have been covered in scars that won't heal. Your skin is pale and mapped with black veins. You realize you can't remember the face of your mother or the name of the forge you worked in. You start to notice changes in your body that aren't even from the surgeons. A third eye is opening in your forehead and your blood has turned into a pressurized acidic slurry that hisses when it touches the floor. But you learn to lean into the deformity that sees the flow of energy in the air and the ghosts of the people you killed to see through the veil, and use the acidic blood to melt the locks on the doors of the faithful. You find that you can also command the shadows in the corner of the room to move when you tell them to. You are becoming a part of the warp itself. Some of your brothers have turned into spawns, now just piles of screaming tentacles and eyes that you see in the lower decks. You remind yourself to never stop moving, to make sure your hate stays sharp, because if you let it go soft, the gods will turn you into a joke. The Black Legion moves onto the next system. You are part of a boarding party hitting a massive merchant ship. The defenders are terrified. You've never seen anything like you. You walk through the corridors and the lights flicker and die. You don't need lights anymore because you have a third eye that can see their heartbeats. Soon after, you find the captain in his quarters, holding onto a small pistol, but shaking so hard you can barely call that holding it. You don't kill him right away because you want to see how long it takes for his mind to break. You stand in the doorway and let the warp shadows fill the room. He starts screaming about things that aren't there. He sees his ancestors and the end of the universe. When he finally puts the gun to his own head, you catch the bullet. You aren't done with him yet. You pull the pistol from his shaking fingers and toss it into the shadows where something with too many teeth catches it midair. The captain is sobbing now, a wet, pathetic sound that reminds you of the leaky pipes in the lower hive. You don't kill him because a quick death is a mercy, and mercy is a currency you stopped carrying a lifetime ago. Instead, you place your heavy ceramic-plated palm over his face and let the warp sight from your third eye bleed into his mind. You show him the reality of the Great Rift, the screaming birth of gods, and the sheer insignificance of his little merchant ship in a galaxy that wants to eat his soul. He stops sobbing and starts to laugh, a high-pitched break in his voice that tells you his mind has finally snapped like a dry twig. You leave him there in the dark, a living monument to the futility of the Golden Throne, and walk back to the extraction cordons while the ship begins to tear itself apart around him. By the time you reach the hangar, you have already forgotten his name, but the taste of his absolute despair stays on your tongue like a fine vintage. It fuels the fire in your secondary heart and reminds you that the only thing better than destroying a body is unmaking a soul. You feel the ship's transition back into the screaming violet of the Imperium, and you welcome the madness because it is the only thing that makes sense anymore. You spend a century raiding the borders of the Imperium. You become a legend in a dozen sectors. They have different names for you. The Butcher of Iridia, the Man with 3 Eyes. You like the names because they give you power, and realize that the Emperor's servants are afraid of you because you are what they could have been. And this inspiration brought a young recruit to the ship one day. He carries the same hungry look that reminds you of yourself. You take him under your wing, telling him the first rule of the Long War: never trust a god that doesn't demand something in return. You then slowly notice that your boulder starts to develop a personality, like the machine spirit has been replaced by something that growls when you aren't in combat. You have to feed it more than just ammunition, wiping the blood of your enemies onto the barrel just to make the whispering stop. It also feels warmer than it should and vibrates with a rhythmic thumping that matches your own double heartbeat. You start to think that the weapon is the one pulling the trigger, and you are just the tripod it uses to move around the battlefield. You see your squad mates talking to their power swords like they are old friends. One of them, a veteran named Varkas, has a suit of armor that has grown long, metallic tongues. The tongues lick the air for the scent of fear. Somehow, you don't find it strange. In the long war, a gun that wants to kill is much more reliable than a gun that just waits for a finger to move. You spend your nights sharpening the serrated edges of your combat blade, while the weapon whispers secrets about the weak spots in Imperial armor. It tells you exactly where the joints are thinnest and promises you that the next kill will be the one that finally satisfies the itch in your brain. You know it is lying, but you listen anyway. The warp calls again, carrying a message from the dark gods themselves. They want a sacrifice in the form of a living saint's head. So you lead a warband to a shrine world. The air is thick with the smell of flowers and holy water. It makes you want to vomit, but you carry on, tearing down the statues and burning the libraries until you find the saint in the center of a great cathedral, glowing with a light that hurts your eyes. She tells you that you're beyond saving and that the emperor still loves you. You laugh so hard your chest plate rattles, telling her that love didn't feed you in the hive or fix your father's lungs. Instead, hate did that, giving you the strength to break your chains. The fight is the hardest one of your life as the saint moves like a leaf in the wind, wielding a sword of pure light that leaves permanent scars every time it touches your armor. But you feel the war boiling in your blood, calling on the shadows and the voices in your head until the room turns into a nightmare. The pillars start to bleed while the floor turns into a mouth. You catch her sword with your bare hand, and though the light burns your palm to the bone, you don't let go. You drive your combat blade through her heart, watching as the light fades and the cathedral goes cold. Then you hold her head up for the gods to see. They respond with a roar of approval that nearly shatters your mind. You're back on the ship now, sitting on the throne made of the boulders of fallen loyalists. You look out at the stars and realize they're so small and fragile, especially since you've been fighting this war for longer than most civilizations have existed. However, you're not tired or bored because you're just getting started. You feel the ship lurch as it enters the warp once more, and so you close your eyes to listen to the screaming of the damned in the hall. It sounds like home, making you think about the next world and the look on their faces when the sky turns purple. You imagine how their prayers will turn into screams when they realize nobody's coming to save them. You're the monster under the bed, and a chaos space marine who treats the galaxy as his hunting ground. One day, the recruit comes into the room to tell you the fleet is ready for the War Master's new target. You stand up and your armor groans, having become a part of you, where you don't know where the metal ends and the meat begins. You grab your boulder and check the magazine, seeing it's full of shells made in a forge just like the one you grew up in. You wonder if the kid who made them is looking at the sky right now, hoping he sees you coming. You want him to know there's a way out of the hive if he's willing to burn everything down to find it. You walk toward the hangar bay, and your footsteps sound like thunder because the long war never ends. It just gets louder. The hangar is a hive of activity where cultists scurry around like insects and bow as you walk past because they're terrified of you, as they should be, considering you killed 3 of them this morning for breathing too loud. You reach your gunship, which is a stormbird warped by the eye with real teeth embedded in the metal around the intake vents. You climb inside and the doors is shut as the engines roar to life. It feels like the ship's screaming in pain, but you love that sound because it reminds you that everything in this universe has to pay a price. You lean back and wait for the drop, thinking about the smell of the Factorum one last time, as if it were a dream someone else had. You used to be that boy, but now you're the thing that kills that boy's nightmare. You feel the ship drop and the gravity shifts to push you into your seat. You look at the monitor to see the new planet. It looks green and peaceful, and that makes you impatient. You want to see it burn and hear the silence that follows the fire. You reach out and touch the name scratched into your gauntlet, though you've long since forgotten who he was. And while you wonder if someone will scratch your name into a gauntlet one day, you decide you don't care because the war provides everything you need. The ship hits the atmosphere and starts to shake, so you pull your helmet on and lock it into place. The world goes red as your HUD flickers to life, and when you hear the voices in the warp laughing, you start laughing too. The ground is coming up fast, revealing defensive lines with big guns and tall walls. They think they're safe because they have a plan, but you know better. A plan is just a lie people tell themselves before the chainsword hits. You brace for the impact, knowing you're the end of the story, the darkness between the stars. You're the reason people keep the lights on at night. The ship slams into the dirt and the doors explode, making you the first one out and the first one to kill. You're home. The battle is a blur of noise and heat where you find yourself in a courtyard filled with statues of local heroes. You smash the marble and gold as you move, wanting nothing beautiful left when you're done. But But then you find a group of young men in uniforms holding their rifles with white knuckles. You see the fear in their eyes, which is the same fear you had at the plaza all those years ago. It's not pity you feel, but rather a strange kind of jealousy because they still have something to lose. You make sure they lose it quickly, moving through them like a scythe through wheat until the courtyard is red. Eventually, you find the governor's palace, which is a tall spire reaching into the clouds. You start at the bottom and work your way up, killing the guards, the servants, and the priests in the chapel. You find the governor in his office, drinking wine and trying to act like he's not about to die. He offers you money and power, but you look at him and see the man who owned the forge and let your father die. You don't say a word. You just keep holding the trigger until the office becomes a mess of fine silk and broken glass. Then, you sit in his chair and finish his wine, though it tastes like ash. You walk out onto the balcony and look at the city glowing with the fires you started. You see the other drop pods landing in the distance, signaling that the Legion is here and the world is yours. But you feel the warp shifting again. It's time to go. You head back to the landing zone and walk past the burning hab block where a boy stands in the ruins. He's looking at you without running or screaming. You stop to look at him, recognizing the spark of hate in his eyes. You point toward the sky where the black ships are waiting and tell him the master is looking for new sons. The boy doesn't hesitate, and as he starts walking toward the ships, you smile behind your helmet. The long war has a new soldier, and so the cycle is starting again. You turn away and head for your own ship. You have a universe to break, and you're running behind schedule.